September 26, 1983, 12:14 a.m. Moscow time. Serpukhov 15, a secret bunker 100 kilometers south of Moscow. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov sits at his console in the command center of the Soviet Union's early warning system. He's 44 years old, a software engineer who knows the system's weaknesses better than anyone. Tonight, he's the duty officer, the man responsible for monitoring signals from Soviet satellites, watching for American nuclear launches. It's a routine shift, boring even. The Cold War has been frozen for decades. Both sides know that launching nuclear weapons means mutual annihilation. The acronym is MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. No one wins a nuclear war. Everyone dies. Petrov drinks his tea and watches the screens. Outside the bunker, autumn darkness covers the Russian countryside. Inside, fluorescent lights hum. Computer systems process data from satellites orbiting 36,000 kilometers above Earth, scanning the continental United States for the infrared signature of ICBM launches. The system is called OKO, Russian for eye. It's supposed to give the Soviet Union 20 to 25 minutes of warning before American missiles reach Moscow. 20 minutes to decide whether to launch a counterstrike. 20 minutes to start World War III or trust that the alarm is false. At 12:15 a.m., the alarm sounds. Petrov looks at his screen. The message is unambiguous. Missile launch detected. One American ICBM has been launched from a base in the United States. Trajectory, Moscow. Time to impact, approximately 25 minutes. Petrov's training is clear. If the system detects a launch, he must immediately notify his superiors at Soviet Military Command. They will wake General Secretary Yuri Andropov. Andropov will have perhaps 10 minutes to decide whether to order a retaliatory strike before American missiles destroy the Soviet Union's ability to respond. Petrov reaches for the phone. His hand stops. One missile doesn't make sense. If the United States launches a nuclear-first strike, it would be massive. Hundreds of missiles designed to overwhelm Soviet defenses and destroy retaliatory capability. Launching one missile is pointless. It's strategically absurd. But the computer is clear. Launch detected. High confidence. Petrov hesitates. If he reports this and it's real, the Soviet response might save lives by ensuring MAD. The Americans would know retaliation is certain. If he reports it and it's false, he might trigger a nuclear war over a computer error. If he doesn't report it and it's real, Moscow burns in 23 minutes and the Soviet Union has no warning to retaliate. Before he can decide, the alarm sounds again. Second missile launch detected. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. The screen now shows 5 American missiles launched and heading towards Soviet territory. Estimated time to impact, 22 minutes. 5 missiles, still not enough for a real first strike, but enough to suggest this isn't an accident. Petrov's console is screaming at him. His subordinates are looking at him, waiting for orders. The protocol is explicit. Report immediately. Petrov has perhaps 3 minutes to make a decision before the launch window closes, before Soviet leadership loses the ability to respond, before the missiles hit. He looks at the screen. 5 American missiles. High confidence. The computer is certain. Petrov doesn't believe it. He picks up the phone not to report an attack, but to declare a system malfunction. False alarm, he tells his superiors. Do not launch. It's the most important decision anyone will make in 1983, perhaps in human history. If Petrov is right, he's just prevented World War III. If he's wrong, 23 million people in Moscow are about to die, and he's just given the United States a free nuclear strike with no retaliation. This is the story of the 23 minutes that almost ended the world. the story of how one Soviet officer trusted his gut over his computer and saved an estimated 200 million lives, and the story of how the world forgot him until it was almost too late. To understand why Stanislav Petrov was sitting in that bunker on September 26th, you need to understand how close the world was to nuclear war in 1983. The Cold War had never been colder. On September 1st, 1983, just 25 days before Petrov's shift, Korean Airlines Flight 007 strayed into Soviet airspace and was shot down by Soviet fighters. All 269 passengers and crew were killed, including U.S. Congressman Larry McDonald. The United States accused the Soviets of deliberately murdering civilians. The Soviets claimed KAL-007 was a spy plane. Relations between Washington and Moscow collapsed to their worst point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. President Ronald Reagan called the Soviet Union an evil empire and announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, a space-based missile defense system the Soviets viewed as preparation for a first strike capability. Both sides were on hair-trigger alert. Soviet leadership genuinely believed the United States might launch a surprise nuclear attack. American intelligence suggested the Soviets were preparing for war. The OCO satellite early warning system was relatively new, only operational since 1982. It had bugs, false alarms, but Soviet military doctrine didn't trust human judgment. The system was designed to remove human hesitation from the decision loop. When the computer said, "Launch detected," you reported it. No questions, no delay. Stanislav Petrov knew this. He also knew something his superiors didn't. The OCO system had fundamental design flaws. Petrov was a software engineer before he became a military officer. He understood how the satellites worked. They detected missiles by looking for the infrared signature of rocket exhaust against the cold backdrop of space, or Earth. But the system had trouble distinguishing between actual missile launches and other bright infrared sources, like sunlight reflecting off clouds at certain angles. The engineers who built OCO knew this. They'd warned about false positives. But in September 1983, with tensions at their highest point in decades, no one wanted to hear about system limitations. So when Petrov sat down for his shift on September 26th, he was already skeptical of his own equipment. That skepticism was about to save the world. 12:15 a.m. First missile detected. Petrov's first thought, "This is wrong. One missile makes no sense." American nuclear doctrine calls for overwhelming first strikes, hundreds of missiles launched simultaneously to destroy Soviet command and control before retaliation is possible. But the computer insists, "Launch detected, high confidence." Petrov checks the satellite data. The detection came from one of the OCO satellites positioned over the United States. The infrared signature matches a missile launch. The trajectory calculations point towards Soviet territory. His subordinates are watching him. The phone to Soviet military headquarters is next to his hand. Protocol says pick it up, report, let the generals decide. Petrov doesn't move. Then, second missile, third, fourth, fifth. Now it's 5 missiles. The alarm is louder. The confidence level is higher. The system is screaming that this is real. Petrov's mind races through the logic. If this is a real American first strike, why only 5 missiles? The U.S. has thousands of ICBMs. A real first strike would be massive, designed to overwhelm Soviet defenses. 5 missiles could be destroyed by Soviet anti-ballistic missile systems around Moscow. They wouldn't guarantee destruction of Soviet retaliatory capability. But what if it's not a real first strike? What if it's a limited strike to take out Soviet leadership in a decapitation attack? 5 missiles targeting the Kremlin, Soviet military command, and key communication nodes. That would make more sense strategically. It would be risky. If even one Soviet submarine survived, it could launch a retaliatory strike. but possible. Petrov looks at the clock. If these missiles are real, they'll impact in 21 minutes. Soviet leadership needs at least 10 minutes to authorize a counterstrike and get the launch orders to missile bases and submarines. He has perhaps 5 minutes to decide. He looks at his console again. The system is certain, but Petrov knows the system. He knows its flaws. He knows it can mistake sunlight for missiles. And he knows one more thing. Ground-based radar hasn't confirmed the launches. The OCO satellites are the first layer of detection. They spot the infrared signature of launches. But the Soviet Union also has ground-based radar installations that should detect incoming missiles as they rise over the horizon. Those radars are showing nothing. If 5 American ICBMs were really in flight, the ground radars should be screaming by now. They're not. Petrov makes his choice. He picks up the phone and reports a system malfunction, not an attack, a false alarm. His superiors are skeptical. 5 separate detections, all false? The system is giving false readings, Petrov insists. I am confident this is a malfunction. Confident or certain? Petrov pauses. He's not certain. He can't be certain. The stakes are too high for certainty. Confident, he repeats. There's silence on the other end of the line. Then, understood. Continue monitoring. The phone goes dead. Petrov waits. If he's wrong, Moscow has 18 minutes left. The command center at Serpukhov 15 is silent. Everyone is watching the clock, watching Petrov, waiting. If the missiles are real, they should be visible on ground radar within minutes. The radar installations along the Soviet border are scanning the horizon, looking for incoming warheads. Nothing. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes. 15. The ground radars see nothing. No missiles. No warheads. No attack. At 12:38 a.m., 23 minutes after the first alarm, the estimated impact time passes. Nothing happens. Moscow is not engulfed in nuclear fire. The Kremlin still stands. There are no mushroom clouds, no electromagnetic pulses knocking out communications, no firestorms consuming Soviet cities. Petrov was right. It was a false alarm. But what caused it? The post-incident investigation would take weeks. Engineers analyzed the satellite data, checked the software, reviewed the orbital positions. They eventually determined the cause: sunlight. On September 26, 1983, the OCO satellite that detected the launches was positioned such that the sun was reflecting off high-altitude clouds over the United States at exactly the angle and intensity that mimicked the infrared signature of a missile launch. The satellites saw 5 separate reflections, 5 bright spots that looked like 5 missiles launching in sequence. The computer did exactly what it was programmed to do. It identified infrared signatures consistent with ICBM launches and reported them with high confidence. It was wrong, but it wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing its job based on imperfect data. This is the nightmare scenario of automated early warning systems. The technology works perfectly, but reality is more complex than the programming. If Stanislav Petrov had trusted the computer, if he'd followed protocol and reported the launch detection immediately, Soviet leadership would have faced an impossible choice. Yuri Andropov, the Soviet Secretary General, was ill and paranoid. He genuinely believed the United States was preparing for war. Presented with evidence of 5 American missiles in flight, he might have ordered a counterstrike. Soviet nuclear doctrine called for massive retaliation. If 1 American city was destroyed, 10 Soviet cities would be destroyed in response. The Soviet response would be to launch everything: hundreds of ICBMs, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, bomber-delivered weapons. The United States would detect the Soviet launch and respond in kind. Within an hour, every major city in both countries would be destroyed. Nuclear winter would follow. An estimated 200 million people would die in the first days, billions more in the aftermath.
all because a satellite mistook sunlight for missiles. And one man said no.
Stanislav Petrov expected recognition, maybe a commendation, at minimum acknowledgement that he'd made the right call under impossible pressure. He got none of that. The Soviet military was embarrassed. The OCO system, the pride of Soviet technology, supposedly infallible, had failed catastrophically. Worse, it had failed in a way that exposed fundamental design flaws. The military couldn't admit this publicly. They couldn't say their early warning system mistook sunlight for nuclear missiles. It would undermine confidence in Soviet defenses. It would suggest vulnerability. So they buried the incident, classified it, pretended it never happened. And Stanislav Petrov? He became a problem. He'd violated protocol. He'd made a decision that should have been made by generals, not a lieutenant colonel in a bunker. He trusted his judgment over the computer, and even though he was right, that kind of independent thinking was dangerous in the Soviet military system. Petrov wasn't punished officially, but he was quietly reassigned, sidelined. His career stalled. He was passed over for promotions. Within a few years, he retired early, disillusioned and broke. No medals, no recognition, no acknowledgement that he'd saved the world. For years, no one outside a small circle of Soviet military officers knew what happened on September 26, 1983. The incident was classified. Petrov was forbidden from talking about it. The Cold War ended. The Soviet Union collapsed, and Stanislav Petrov faded into obscurity, living in a small apartment outside Moscow on a pension of $200 a month. It wasn't until 1998, 15 years after the incident, that the story became public. A documentary filmmaker researching Cold War near misses uncovered references to the September 26th incident in declassified documents. He tracked down Petrov and interviewed him. The story emerged slowly. Petrov was reluctant to talk, still bound by decades of military secrecy conditioning. But eventually, he told what happened. The alarm, the 5 missiles, the decision, the 23 minutes. The world finally learned how close it had come to annihilation. Who was Stanislav Petrov? What kind of person makes that decision? He was born in 1939 in Vladivostok, grew up during World War II, studied engineering, and joined the Soviet military. He was competent but not exceptional, a middle-rank officer who understood computers better than most of his superiors. He didn't see himself as a hero. In interviews after the story became public, he was uncomfortable with attention. He insisted he'd just been doing his job. "I was just at the right place at the right time," he said. "I had a funny feeling in my gut that this was a false alarm. I didn't want to start World War III. A funny feeling in his gut. That's what saved 200 million lives. But it wasn't just intuition. Petrov's decision was based on logical analysis. 1 or 5 missiles didn't match American nuclear doctrine. Ground radar showed no confirmation. The OCO system had known reliability issues. The geopolitical context made a surprise attack unlikely. He synthesized all this in 3 minutes and made the call. Still, even he admitted he wasn't certain. "I was never sure," he said. "Even now I'm not sure. I just hoped I was right." After the story became public, Petrov received some recognition. In 2004, the Association of World Citizens gave him a World Citizen Award. In 2006, he was invited to the United Nations. Various peace organizations honored him. But Russia never officially acknowledged what he did. No Russian medal, no state commendation. The Kremlin stayed silent. Petrov lived in relative poverty. His apartment was small, his pension meager. He suffered from health problems. Friends described him as lonely, bitter about how the military had treated him. In 2013, Documentary filmmaker Peter Anthony made a film about Petrov called The Man Who Saved the World. The film brought Petrov's story to a wider audience. It earned him some speaking fees, which helped his financial situation. But it didn't change the fundamental injustice. The man who prevented nuclear war died poor and mostly forgotten in his own country. Stanislav Petrov died on May 19, 2017, at age 77. His death went unnoticed for months. It wasn't until September 2017, 4 months later, that his son confirmed he had died. The world he saved barely noticed he was gone.
The terrifying question, how many other times has the world almost ended? The September 26, 1983 incident wasn't unique. Declassified documents reveal numerous close calls during the Cold War. November 9, 1979, NORAD computers showed a massive Soviet missile attack on the United States. Fighter jets scrambled. Nuclear bomber crews started engines. The attack was a test scenario accidentally loaded into the live system. June 3, 1980, NORAD again showed Soviet missiles inbound. This time, a faulty computer chip was generating false data. January 25, 1995, Russian radar detected a missile launch off the coast of Norway. It was actually a scientific research rocket, but Russian leadership didn't know that. President Boris Yeltsin had the nuclear briefcase opened and was minutes from ordering retaliation when the trajectory was confirmed as non-threatening. Each time, someone made the right call. Someone decided the alarm was false. Someone prevented the launch. But luck runs out. Eventually, the wrong person is on duty, or the right person makes the wrong call, or the computer error is too convincing to question. In 1983, the right person was on duty. Stanislav Petrov had the technical knowledge to understand the system's limitations, the analytical mind to question the computer, and the courage to trust his judgment over protocol. If someone else had been sitting at that console, someone more obedient, less skeptical, more trusting of technology, the world might have ended. That's the nightmare of nuclear weapons. The system is designed to launch before you're sure, to retaliate before verification, to shoot first because waiting might mean you can't shoot at all. It's a system optimized for speed, not accuracy, and it only takes one mistake.
What should we learn from Stanislav Petrov? First, technology is fallible. The OCO system worked as designed and still got it wrong. The most sophisticated early warning system in the world mistook sunlight for missiles. We trust computers to make life and death decisions, but computers don't understand context. They follow programming. Second, protocol can be wrong. Petrov violated his orders. He was supposed to report immediately. If he'd followed protocol, hundreds of millions of people would have died. Sometimes the right decision is to break the rules. Third, expertise matters. Petrov understood the system's limitations because he was an engineer. He knew how the satellites worked, what could go wrong, where the weak points were. His technical knowledge gave him the confidence to question the alarm. Fourth, we got lucky. Petrov happened to be on duty. He happened to have the right knowledge. He happened to make the right call. That's not a system. That's chance. Nuclear deterrence depends on luck holding forever. Eventually, it won't. Fifth, heroism isn't always rewarded. Petrov saved the world and died poor. The Soviet Union punished him for violating protocol. Russia never acknowledged what he did. The people who benefit most from someone's heroism are often the least likely to recognize it. The September 26, 1983 incident should be taught in every school. It should be a national holiday, the day we didn't die. Instead, it's a footnote. Most people have never heard of Stanislav Petrov. We came within 3 minutes of nuclear war. One man's decision, one moment of skepticism prevented it.
And then we forgot about it and went back to building more nuclear weapons. Today, there are approximately 12,700 nuclear warheads in the world. The United States has about 5,400. Russia has about 6,000. Smaller arsenals exist in France, China, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. The early warning systems are faster now, more sophisticated. AI-assisted detection, satellite networks that cover the globe, decision timelines measured in minutes, not hours. But the fundamental problem remains. These systems are designed to launch before confirmation, to retaliate before you're sure, because waiting to be sure means dying without launching. No one is sitting in a bunker like Stanislav Petrov was, with 23 minutes to make a decision. Today's systems would compress that timeline to perhaps 5 minutes, maybe less. And the decision-makers trust the technology more than Petrov did. They believe the computers are reliable, the satellites accurate, the algorithms sound. They're probably right. Modern systems are better than OCO. But probably right isn't the same as certainly right. On September 26, 1983, the system was wrong, confidently wrong, and one skeptical engineer prevented catastrophe. Next time, that engineer might not be on duty. Next time, the lucky coincidence might not happen. Next time, the computer might be trusted. Stanislav Petrov's story isn't just history, it's a warning. Nuclear weapons remain on hair-trigger alert. Early warning systems remain imperfect. Human judgment remains the final safeguard. And human judgment can fail. Petrov got it right. He had the knowledge, the courage, and the 3 minutes he needed to make the call. We won't always be that lucky. The man who saved the world is dead. The weapons that almost destroyed it remain ready to launch. The early warning systems that generate the false alarms are faster and more confident than ever. And somewhere, right now, someone is sitting at a console, watching for missiles, hoping they never have to make the decisions Stanislav Petrov made on September 26, 1983. Hoping they never see the alarm, never face the choice, never have to decide whether the computer is right or the world is about to end. Hoping luck holds. Because that's all we have. Luck in the memory of one Soviet officer who didn't believe his screen and saved everyone. The world forgot Stanislav Petrov. It forgot September 26, 1983. It forgot how close we came. Maybe that's the real danger. Not that the alarms will sound again, but that when they do, no one will remember what happened last time. No one will remember the man who said no when the computer said launch. No one will remember that questioning the system is sometimes the only way to survive it. Stanislav Petrov died alone, poor, and largely unknown. He saved 200 million lives and got nothing for it. But he also proved something important. In the 23 minutes between alarm and annihilation, one person can make the difference. One person can choose not to end the world. And sometimes, that's enough.